Hi guys, welcome to Monitoring and Evaluation Made Simple. I'm your host, Coach Alexander. I'm so glad that you've joined me onto this YouTube channel. And if you're here for the very first time, please subscribe to this channel because on a regular basis, I post updates on M&E. Today is the last part of the 7-part series, How to Monitor and Evaluate a Project. Part 7, Learning and Corrective Action. But before we go any further, I just wanted to say that there are these 2 free ebooks, okay? One is Learn Logical Framework Analysis Step-by-Step Guide and the Monitoring and Evaluation Beginner's Guide. I want you to download these ebooks. If you face any challenges, please feel free to write to me. One note, guys, if you're using Gmail, sometimes you may not see them on the main column, the main inbox, but they are usually, the books usually come in the promotions tab. So be careful to check the promotions tab if you are using Gmail. Okay, so as usual, this is a long video, so please take full advantage of the timestamps and please get the full benefit of this video without having to watch everything. Just go to the part of this video which is more important to you. So without wasting any more time, let's get started, shall we? Okay, so now, first of all, I would like to ask you this question. Why is it that we even do monitoring and evaluation? All right? At whatever stage in life, why are we doing this? Why do we even bother? Why do we even care? Why is it that the projects that are running have to go through this process? Think about it, guys. Well, ultimately, it's, as human beings, we want to learn. Okay, it's an issue of continuously learning from our mistakes, possibly even learning from our strengths. We always want to do the best. We want to achieve the best. That is who we are. The sky is the limit. So we do M&E because it helps us learn and it helps us correct things. It helps us make those amends, okay? So if you look at that image, that is what all of this is about, okay? We want to be perfect. We want to be the best that we can ever be when it comes to implementation of projects, when it comes to career advancement, when it comes to think about the things you want to do well, okay, in your life. That is why M&E is there. So I usually like to think of M&E more than the project part of it, but it's all about who we are inside as well. So now, I'm sure you see this image. There's an engineer and he's assessing a crack in a building. We all know what cracks can do. Cracks can do a lot of harm. So now, his area of interest is not to blame anyone. Okay, he goes there with an open mind and wants to understand, why is a building cracking? When you used the right personnel to do this building, when you pumped in money, when you got the right material, why is this building cracking? So from an independent perspective, if you're a person who likes witch hunting, the first thing you're going to do is say there's corruption. All right? But sometimes it's not always about that. It could be there is limitations in the personnel you used to build this building. It could be that, yes, these are engineers who built this building, but are they fully qualified? Does it help us see the need to really screen the people we employ for these projects? Or does it help us see the need to strengthen these people who are already employed, maybe giving them further training or maybe giving them further equipment? Or maybe let's look at it at another angle. Could it be that there was no money to build a solid building? Or could it be that there was an earthquake in that area which caused these cracks? And hence, what can we do in future to prevent a building from cracking? Perhaps we need to come up with technology that can resist earthquakes. So you can see the thinking process that is happening, from an independent person, as you can see on that picture, coming to assess why this is happening. So what is learning, guys? I'm sure you've heard of this saying, we learn from our mistakes. What do we really mean? Learning is really a process. I'm sure you go on the internet right now, you'll find a lot of articles about what learning is. A lot of journals that have been written to explain this learning. But what is learning? It's actually a process of acquiring new understanding, knowledge, behavior, skills, values, attitudes, and preferences. I like the way this has been defined because I always give this example. I don't know how many of you out there like the Mercedes-Benz vehicle or the BMW vehicle. Do you know that the vehicles that you see today, 20, 30 years ago, you probably wouldn't want to drive them? Do you know that? At least I do. Because when you see these latest luxurious cars driving around, they drive around with a lot of history. There was a lot of trial and error for them to come up with a product that when you look at it today, you just say, okay, this is kind of like perfection, but we all know perfection cannot really be achieved. But you really appreciate what is actually happening, the energy and time and effort that has been put into building such a very nice car. So for them to reach that stage, there were failures, there was a lot of learning. So the learning is really the process of learning. You need to test things, you need to experience things, you need to reflect. You know, one thing I have to tell you is that failure is not a bad thing. But in the NGO world, all right, if your project fails and you come up with a report that is bad, that can affect your funding. But you know, that shouldn't be the case, because it is through the failure that we learn. And it is through this learning that things can become better. So all I'm saying is that, guys, don't be afraid to learn, to get better at what you do. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time for learning. But every second counts, every minute counts. And sorry, I'm talking a lot, but I hope you're getting the point. So the corrective action now comes in when now you want to mend the mistakes you made in the past. So you saw that example of the building. It had so many cracks in it. So now it is determined that the people that built it were fully qualified, they had adequate resources, and there was no earthquake. But they only lacked one thing. They didn't follow the correct procedure when it came to erecting that building. And they are not a unique case, okay? There could be other similar cases. So now the question is, what do you do? What corrective measures should be done? There should be a unit that properly monitors these people who are actually building. Okay, and that's what happens when you learn. You see that, okay, could we put a unit that monitors these things? So you need to make amends. That is why, guys, when I look at M&D, I tend to think of it in a very detailed manner. Because the issue is that you want to grow. But growth, guys, growth doesn't happen instantly, doesn't happen instantaneously. There are processes. You need to learn to be patient with these things. But unfortunately, it is not like that. But in your personal lives, it should be like that. So we need to say that when we are taking corrective actions, we are making that commitment to bring about change, to bring about change in the way we do the project planning and the implementation. Sometimes we take focus too much on they didn't do this the right way. They didn't mix the cement well. You brought in the wrong people. We spent too much time doing that. But how was our planning done? Did we plan adequately? Did we think through things? I have noticed, for instance, that sometimes when it comes to these project implementations that are happening around the world, at the planning stage, they don't involve M&D personnel. It's only after the project has already started running. Now, do you know what happens there? One, the baseline is not even conducted on time. Two, there is no system. You want the M&D officer to build a system there and then. While the project has been running maybe for 6 to 12 months, you're in your second year. That is not how it's done. M&D personnel should be brought in the project right from the very beginning. And it helps a lot when you do that because one, you get all the indicators you need correctly done at the onset. That is one point, but I won't go into detail. Let's go to the next slide. So now, the M&E, you've got the monitoring, you've got the evaluation. I have to say, for me, and this is, I know M&D goes hand in hand, but you have to agree that now the most sought for report is actually the evaluation report because it is all encompassing and it gives you point blank, at least it's supposed to anyway, it's supposed to give you point blank without beating behind the bush that this project has succeeded in achieving its objectives. That's what an evaluation report does. And then it mentions why. It also mentions where you failed. Now, the evaluation process, since it is holistically done, it looks at so many things like the efficiency, the effectiveness, the sustainability, things like that are looked in when a consultant conducts the evaluation. So now, immediately the report is done, the project management team is supposed to review the findings and make the necessary comments. There is nothing wrong with commenting, all right? But one thing we should remember as management, if the results are poor, don't tell the consultant to change the poor results and make them look good. Because then things get compromised. We need to really accept what is there. And for us to avoid, sometimes there are things we can control, sometimes there are things we can't control. But to avoid that embarrassment of having these poor results, it's always good to have a midterm evaluation. If you can't afford a midterm evaluation, let your M&D unit do an internal evaluation which prepares you for the final evaluation. So now, once the consultant has taken note of your comments, he or she will make the necessary changes, and then the management team will approve the report as a working draft document. So as soon as that draft is approved, it is now shared to the stakeholders. And this is, to me, the most, I think it's the most important part of the whole learning process. The stakeholders need to be part of discussing the findings and seeing whether it's really reflective of what is on the ground. Okay, are they fully satisfied with what has been written? Those are questions that matter a lot. So usually the stakeholders who were involved in the planning of this project should also be involved in the evaluation. All right, because they have a very good input in the whole learning cycle. So now, one of the observations I've made in the 10 years I've been in the monitoring and evaluation profession is that sometimes we don't want to involve the beneficiaries themselves in interpreting the findings. You have these big meetings and you just have high profile stakeholders, but you don't bring in the actual beneficiaries who you were targeting to give you input on whether it is really reflective. So I think if you've been doing that, perfect. But if it's something you feel should be improved, it's important to do that, because then you are involving the stakeholders. They are also a stakeholder in all of this. Government officials are important stakeholders. I like to think of support, the project support to communities, as a supplementing effort. Yeah, simply supplementing government effort. So usually, I'm sure you've noticed that in this channel we talk about projects related to humanitarian, but even projects that are like done by the government themselves, it's obvious there should be government officials there. So now, when the discussions have been undertaken, all the stakeholders will agree to the recommendations, and then the report will be endorsed as a true reflection of the views of everyone. And this is when now you obviously now can offload the information to different communication channels. So now what does this do? It helps a lot when these recommendations have been documented and agreed upon, especially when now it comes to future programming. Because ultimately, we want to have good projects, good programs that are really making a difference. The thing is that I'm just touching on something else. It's part of this whole thing, but let me just touch on it. This issue of sustainability, you want projects to sustain themselves. The evaluation should fully touch on that. Is it sustainable? Is it not? If it's not sustainable, why isn't it able to sustain itself, and what recommendations should be put in place to make sure it's running. Because what happens is that if a donor pulls out these days, then the project dies indefinitely. Of course, okay, the thing is that as per definition, the project has a lifespan. That much we appreciate, but we all know what is there on the ground, guys. You have a project running 2 to 3 years, then they will have another project, the same project, but it's coming under a different name. Okay, so you find that in reality, it's just the same project running with the same donor, and it's only when the donor pulls out that it also dies. So this is something we really need to think about as a community and as a global scale. How do we sustain some of these projects so that it really the impact is really seen over a long period of time? Okay, so thanks so much for being there, being here for this presentation. And if you missed out on the other parts of this series, please, you can, I have a playlist, refer to the playlist, watch all the videos and gain a further understanding on how M&E is done. So I think it has taken about 3 weeks now or 4, but I'm so glad you were here with me throughout the way. So until we meet again, I've been your host, Coach Alexander, and see you on the other side. Bye.